Welcome back. Today, we begin with a simple but unusual thought. What if some questions were never meant to be answered at all? We grow up learning that every question should lead to a solution, that curiosity exists to uncover facts in close uncertainty. But history, science, and everyday life quietly suggest something different. Some questions seem to resist answers, no matter how much time passes or how much knowledge we collect. These questions appear again and again across cultures and generations. They are asked in different words, yet they point to the same uncertainty. What is consciousness? Why does anything exist at all? Is meaning something we discover, or something we create? Despite centuries of reflection, no final explanation has replaced these questions. Instead, they remain open, unchanged, and strangely persistent. What makes this interesting is not failure, but function. These questions may not exist to be solved. They exist to shape how humans think. When a question has no clear answer, it invites reflection rather than conclusion. It encourages humility instead of certainty. In many cases, the absence of an answer keeps curiosity alive longer than any explanation could. Throughout history, societies that accepted uncertainty often produced deeper art, philosophy, and culture. Rather than closing the door on mystery, they learned to live beside it. Questions without answers became shared spaces for thought, conversation, and imagination. They allowed people to explore ideas without needing to defend a final position. In a world that often values quick solutions, unanswered questions feel uncomfortable. Yet they play a quiet role in human development. They remind us that not everything meaningful can be measured or resolved. Sometimes, a question's greatest purpose is not to end curiosity, but to keep it moving forward. Today's story is not about finding answers. It is about recognizing that some questions exist simply to be asked, and that may be enough. Human curiosity is frequently driven by more than survival or practical need. Many of the questions people ask do not help them build shelter, find food, or solve immediate problems. Instead, these questions reach into areas that offer no clear advantage, no measurable result, and no obvious reward. And yet, humans continue to ask them. Throughout history, people have wondered about things that had no direct impact on daily life. They questioned the nature of reality, the origins of thought, and the purpose behind existence itself. These questions did not make life easier, safer, or more efficient. In some cases, they even created discomfort by challenging accepted beliefs. Still, curiosity persisted. This suggests that curiosity is not only a tool for progress, but a fundamental trait of being human. It pushes individuals to explore ideas simply because they are there to be explored. The value lies not in usefulness, but in engagement. Asking a question can be an act of meaning-making rather than problem-solving. Many breakthroughs in philosophy, art, and even science began as questions with no clear application. At the time they were asked, they seemed unnecessary. Only later did they reshape how people understood themselves and the world. Even then, their original purpose was not efficiency, but understanding. Curiosity that extends beyond usefulness also reveals something about human identity. It shows a desire to connect with something larger than immediate experience. These questions allow people to step outside routine and consider possibilities that cannot be tested or confirmed. By asking questions that serve no practical function, humans demonstrate that not everything important must be useful. Some questions exist simply because the mind seeks depth, not answers. In that sense, curiosity itself becomes the reason, independent of any outcome. Not every idea that could exist will ever be known. This thought is unsettling because it suggests that human knowledge, no matter how advanced, will always be incomplete. There may be concepts, patterns, or truths that remain permanently outside human awareness not because they are hidden, but because no one ever thinks to look for them. Throughout history, discoveries often appear accidental. An idea emerges when the right question is asked at the right moment, within the right cultural and technological context. Without that context, the idea simply never forms. It does not wait patiently in the background. It disappears into possibility, unnoticed and unnamed. This means entire ways of understanding the world may never surface. Not because they are impossible, but because human attention is limited. Societies prioritize certain problems and ignore others. Languages shape what can be expressed. Beliefs determine what feels worth exploring. Anything outside those boundaries may remain invisible. Even today, with vast access to information, attention is selective. We focus on what feels relevant, measurable, or rewarding. Ideas that do not promise immediate value often fade before they are fully formed. Over time, this creates gaps in understanding that no one recognizes as missing. What makes this idea profound is that we cannot measure what we fail to discover. Lost ideas leave no evidence. There is no record of what was never imagined. Progress is therefore not a straight path toward completeness, but a narrow trail through an endless landscape of unrealized thought. Accepting this limitation changes how we view knowledge. It encourages humility rather than certainty. The world may be richer, stranger, and more complex than any explanation we can offer. Some ideas may never be discovered, not because humanity failed, but because discovery itself has limits. And perhaps that is part of what makes curiosity meaningful, not as a path to total understanding, but as a reminder of how much will always remain unknown. Human history is often described as a steady accumulation of knowledge, passed carefully from one generation to the next. But in reality, forgetting plays just as large a role as remembering. Civilizations do not simply build upon the past. They also abandon it. Over time, skills disappear, meanings fade, and entire ways of thinking are lost. Languages vanish when they are no longer spoken. Techniques disappear when they are no longer practiced. Ideas fall out of use when they no longer fit the needs or values of a society. None of this happens suddenly. Forgetting is gradual, quiet, and usually unnoticed while it is happening. What makes this especially striking is that forgetting often accompanies progress. As new systems replace old ones, certain knowledge becomes unnecessary. People stop teaching it. Records are simplified or discarded. Eventually, what was once essential becomes mysterious or misunderstood. Later generations may not even realize that something has been lost. This process reshapes how civilizations understand themselves. The past begins to look simpler than it truly was. Achievements are remembered, but methods are forgotten. Stories survive, but context disappears. Over time, history becomes a collection of fragments rather than a complete picture. Forgetting also limits the questions people ask. If a society no longer remembers certain ideas, it cannot build upon them. Entire paths of thought close without anyone noticing. The future is shaped not only by what is preserved, but by what quietly disappears. Recognizing this pattern challenges the idea that progress always moves forward. Civilization advances, but not in a straight line. It grows by choosing what to carry forward and what to leave behind. In that sense, humanity may forget more than it remembers, and the forgotten may be just as important as what remains. Reality often feels solid and shared, as if everyone is standing on the same ground, seeing the same world in the same way. But when we look closer, this certainty begins to soften. Human experience is shaped by perception, memory, language, and belief. What feels obvious to one person may feel distant or unclear to another. Throughout history, people have described the world in radically different ways, even when living in the same place and time. Cultural background influences what is noticed and what is ignored. Language shapes how experiences are categorized. Personal history affects how events are interpreted. As a result, reality becomes less like a single picture and more like a collection of overlapping perspectives. This does not mean that facts do not exist. It means that meaning is filtered. Two people can witness the same moment and walk away with different understandings of what happened. Over time, these differences accumulate, shaping beliefs, traditions, and worldviews. Entire societies may come to agree on interpretations that feel natural to them, while appearing strange to others. What makes this idea unsettling is that there may be no final, neutral version of reality that everyone can access equally. Understanding is always partial. Even shared experiences are processed internally, influenced by emotion and expectation. This makes complete agreement difficult and sometimes impossible. Yet this diversity of perception also has value. It allows creativity, empathy, and adaptation. Different experiences produce different questions, and those questions push understanding in new directions. Reality becomes richer, not weaker, because it is viewed from many angles. Recognizing that reality is not experienced the same way by everyone encourages patience and humility. It reminds us that disagreement does not always come from error, but from perspective. The world may be shared, but how it is understood remains deeply personal. There are places that feel different, even when nothing visible explains why. A quiet room, an empty street, or an old building can carry a sense of weight or familiarity that goes beyond physical appearance. This raises an unusual question: can places hold memory, even without awareness? Throughout history, humans have assigned meaning to locations. Events happen, emotions are felt, and time passes, yet the space remains. Over years and generations, people return and sense something lingering, even when the original context is gone. This feeling does not come from the place thinking or remembering, but from how humans interact with it. Memory, in this sense, is layered. It exists in architecture, wear, arrangement, and absence. A path worn into the ground tells a story without words. A building altered repeatedly reflects changing priorities. Even emptiness can signal what once existed. These traces shape how people feel when they enter a space. What makes this idea compelling is that memory does not require awareness to influence experience. A place does not need intention to affect those who pass through it. Human minds recognize patterns, connect stories, and project meaning. Over time, these associations become shared, passed quietly from one person to another. This explains why certain locations inspire reflection or caution, even without explanation. The past is not actively present, but its effects remain. Places become silent witnesses to what occurred, holding impressions rather than thoughts. Considering this possibility changes how we see space. Locations are not neutral backdrops. They participate in human experience by carrying traces of what has happened there. Memory may not belong to places in the way it belongs to people, but its influence can still be felt, shaping perception long after events have passed. There is a quiet idea that appears again and again in philosophy and science. That observation itself may play a role in giving things meaning. Not meaning in a poetic sense, but in how something becomes real to us at all. Until something is noticed, named, or acknowledged, it exists in a strange state of irrelevance. Countless things happen every day without being observed. Moments pass, patterns form, and changes occur, yet they leave no trace in memory or record. From a human perspective, it is almost as if they never happened. This raises an uncomfortable thought: does something truly matter if no one is aware of it? Observation does more than register existence. It organizes it. When humans observe, they classify, compare, and assign importance. A sound becomes a signal. A movement becomes an event. A pattern becomes a discovery. Without observation, these elements remain unconnected, drifting without context. This does not mean that the world depends on humans to exist. It means that meaning, as humans understand it, may depend on attention. A star that collapses in distant space changes nothing for human history unless it is observed. Once noticed, however, it becomes part of knowledge, theory, and imagination. The same applies to everyday life. Experiences that go unnoticed fade instantly. Those that are observed linger, shaping memory and identity. Attention transforms presence into significance. What we look at carefully begins to matter more. This idea suggests that meaning is not fixed within things themselves. It emerges through interaction. Observation becomes a bridge between existence and understanding. By noticing, humans participate in shaping what feels real, important, and lasting. In that sense, observation is not passive. It is an active force, quietly turning existence into experience. Silence is often treated as empty space, a pause between meaningful moments. But in many situations, silence carries information of its own. What is not said can shape understanding just as strongly as words, sometimes even more so. In human interaction, silence can signal hesitation, uncertainty, agreement, or refusal. A delayed response can change the meaning of a conversation. The absence of explanation can invite interpretation. Over time, people learn to read these gaps, filling them with assumptions based on context and experience. Silence becomes a form of communication that relies on awareness rather than language. History reflects this pattern as well. Periods where records disappear, voices go missing, or responses never arrive often leave lasting effects. Decisions are made without clarification. Actions are taken in the absence of guidance. Later generations look back and attempt to interpret what that silence meant, even when no clear answer exists. Silence can also protect meaning. Some ideas are left unspoken because speaking them would limit them. By remaining undefined, they stay open to reflection. In this way, silence preserves complexity. It allows space for multiple interpretations rather than forcing a single conclusion. What makes silence powerful is that it demands attention. When something is missing, the mind notices. It searches for patterns, reasons, and implications. This process can reveal more about the observer than about the silence itself. Meaning emerges not from what is given, but from how absence is understood. Recognizing silence as information changes how we listen. It reminds us that communication is not only about expression, but about awareness. In many cases, what shapes understanding most strongly is not the presence of sound or explanation, but the quiet space where something could have been said and was not. Progress is often described as growth, more knowledge, more technology, more control. But expansion is not the only possible outcome of advancement. In some cases, progress can narrow human experience rather than deepen it. As systems become more efficient, certain forms of understanding may quietly fade. When tools simplify tasks, skills are no longer practiced. When answers are easily available, patience becomes less necessary. Over time, reliance on convenience can reduce curiosity, reflection, and depth. What is gained in speed may be lost in awareness. Progress moves forward, but not always outward. This does not mean advancement is harmful. It means it comes with trade-offs. As societies optimize for productivity, they may leave less room for uncertainty, contemplation, or slow understanding. Questions that once invited reflection are replaced by quick conclusions. Complexity is reduced to function. History shows that periods of rapid development often reshape values. What was once meaningful becomes outdated. Practices that required time and attention are replaced by faster alternatives. The human role shifts from participant to operator, from explorer to manager. Yet something essential can be diminished in the process. The ability to sit with uncertainty, to observe without immediate purpose, and to ask questions without expecting answers becomes rarer. Progress solves problems, but it can also close spaces where meaning once grew. Understanding this helps balance how progress is measured. Growth should not be judged only by capability, but by what remains human within it. Advancement that leaves no room for reflection may move society forward, but inwardly, it may make humanity smaller. Progress does not automatically expand what it means to be human. Without care, it can quietly reshape humanity into something more efficient, but less aware. Humans often speak as if time is something to be managed, saved, or controlled. Schedules, calendars, and measurements give the impression that time is a resource shaped by human intention. Yet in reality, it may be time that shapes human life far more deeply than the other way around. From birth, human experience is structured by time. Growth, aging, memory, and expectation all unfold within its flow. Decisions are influenced by deadlines, seasons, and limited duration. Even identity is shaped by timing: when someone is born, when they experience change, and how long they are given to adapt. History itself reflects this influence. Ideas that appear too early are ignored. Ideas that arrive too late are dismissed. The same thought can succeed or fail depending entirely on timing. Human agency operates within these boundaries, not outside them. What makes time powerful is that it moves regardless of intention. People can plan, delay, or accelerate actions, but they cannot stop the passage itself. This creates pressure, urgency, and impermanence. Meaning is often defined by scarcity rather than abundance. Time also shapes perspective. What feels urgent in one moment may feel insignificant later. Memories change as distance grows. Understanding evolves not because facts change, but because time allows reflection. Humans do not simply experience time, they are transformed by it. Recognizing this reverses a common assumption. Instead of humans shaping time through organization and measurement, it may be time that shapes human behavior, values, and understanding. Life unfolds not as a series of controlled moments, but as a response to an unstoppable flow. In this sense, time is not a background condition. It is an active force, quietly guiding human thought, action, and meaning. Human curiosity often assumes that every question has an answer waiting to be discovered. From early learning to advanced science, progress is framed as moving from uncertainty to clarity. Yet some questions seem resistant to resolution, no matter how much knowledge accumulates. Their value may lie elsewhere. These questions act less like problems and more like mirrors. When humans ask them, the answers tend to reveal beliefs, fears, and assumptions rather than objective truths. Questions about meaning, consciousness, or ultimate purpose often change depending on culture, era, and personal experience. The question remains, but the interpretation evolves. Such questions shape thinking by stretching the limits of understanding. They force people to confront uncertainty without the comfort of closure. This process builds intellectual humility, reminding humanity that knowledge has boundaries. Instead of providing solutions, these questions refine how humans reason, doubt, and imagine. History shows this pattern clearly. Philosophical questions debated thousands of years ago are still discussed today, not because progress failed, but because the act of questioning itself proved valuable. Each generation revisits them with new language, tools, and perspectives, gaining insight even without final answers. In this way, unresolved questions function as anchors for reflection. They slow thinking down in a world that often prioritizes speed and certainty. They encourage dialogue rather than conclusions, curiosity rather than dominance. The lack of a definitive answer becomes a feature, not a flaw. Understanding this changes how curiosity is viewed. Instead of measuring questions by whether they can be solved, they can be valued for how they shape thought, culture, and awareness. Some questions guide humanity not toward answers, but toward deeper ways of seeing. Their purpose may not be to end inquiry, but to keep it alive. Asking questions has always driven human progress, but not every question is neutral or harmless. Some questions, once asked, cannot be taken back. They open doors to knowledge that may arrive before wisdom, ethics, or responsibility are fully prepared to handle it. Throughout history, humans have crossed lines simply because curiosity made it possible. The urge to know what happens if has led to discoveries that reshape the world, sometimes in ways no one intended. When questions move faster than moral reflection, consequences can spread far beyond the original curiosity. There is also the risk of framing reality in ways that reduce empathy. Certain questions can turn lives, nature, or entire societies into abstract problems rather than lived experiences. When curiosity disconnects from compassion, it can justify harm by treating outcomes as experiments instead of responsibilities. At the same time, refusing to ask difficult questions carries its own dangers. Silence can preserve comfort but also allow ignorance to grow. The challenge lies not in stopping curiosity, but in guiding it. Asking better questions becomes just as important as finding answers. This places responsibility on those who question, research, and explore. Curiosity must be paired with awareness of impact, long-term effects, and unintended outcomes. The most meaningful questions are not only about what is possible, but about what should be pursued and why. In the end, humanity is defined not only by the questions it dares to ask, but by how carefully it chooses them. Questions shape futures before answers ever arrive. Recognizing that power may be one of the most important lessons curiosity can teach. As we reach the end of today's journey, it becomes clear that some questions were never meant to be fully answered. They exist to challenge certainty, stretch imagination, and remind humanity of its limits as much as its potential. From questions that reshape how we think, to those that demand responsibility and ethical awareness, curiosity proves to be both a gift and a test. These unanswered questions connect generations across time. Each era revisits them with new knowledge and new fears, yet the core wonder remains the same. They push humanity forward not by offering closure, but by keeping the mind open, alert, and reflective. In a world that often seeks quick conclusions, these questions invite patience and deeper thought. Thank you for exploring these strange and timeless questions with us today. If this journey sparked your curiosity, do not forget to like the video, share it with others who love deep thinking, and subscribe for more stories that challenge what we think we know. Until next time, keep wondering and stay curious.